Welcome back. Let's get into this discussion now. So Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi will deliver his State of the Province address tomorrow. The province, of course, is battling high crime, water and electricity cuts, as well as decaying inner cities. Well, we're joined now by DA Gauteng leader and provincial legislature member Solly Msimanga to talk to us about what they think the Premier should prioritize in his SOPA tomorrow. Solly, a good evening to you and thank you so much for joining us. Really interesting because obviously there's the DA has written quite a lengthy statement of what you expect to hear from the Premier. And the wording in it quite interesting. I mean, for me, it stands out because the Democratic Alliance, of course, not governing in the province. And so official opposition for Gauteng you are. And as part of the statement you've written, as the leader of the GPU, Lesufi has excelled mainly in arrogance, broken promises and denialism. It's a strong start to that statement.
Well, thank you very much, Naledi, and good evening to you and good evening to the viewers at home. I think history has been the very best teacher in this instance. We have seen quite a number of times where Premier Lesufi just gets excited, in front of a stage, gets on a platform, makes all sorts of promises, but actually explains what have happened, and actually then delivers very little of it. And in certain instances, we have seen where he would have made an announcement, during the State of the Province address, and then deny the same announcement during the debate. One such example would have been, the Mapanyaza, where you can play the clip itself. Last year, where he said that the Mapanyaza are all now employed on a permanent basis. A week later, during the debate, he says he never said such a thing, and all of them are still going training, and then they will look at what needs to happen. A week from there, quite a number of people started then receiving, termination letter of the contracts that they were having. Because, according to the number of head of departments in government who have been saying to us that, there's just no money to continue with the programs. And as I've said before, this has actually then proven to be just an election ploy that backfired spectacularly. So what we're expecting from Panyaza Lesufi, tomorrow is to apologize to the people of Gauteng, first of all, to take accountability for the failures that has been there, whether you're talking from a health perspective, from the safety perspective, as you were saying, that, crime remains very high in Gauteng, from a sluggish economy that we're experiencing, infrastructure that is falling apart. He needs to start by apologizing from there. And then he needs to then tell us, how is he going to make sure that, all hospitals in Gauteng that are, by the way, none of the hospitals in Gauteng are compliant in terms of occupation. None of our police stations are actually then suitable to continue doing the work that they're supposed to be doing. Certain police stations don't even have holding cells to start with. You still have schools that kids are still using the bucket system. And kids are still crowded in certain schools where you go, you find 98, 99 learners, grade R learners or grade 2 learners, where there's 90 plus learners in a class. Surely that is not a true or the kind of situation that we want to then find ourselves in. That's what he needs to then start by doing tomorrow.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, you've touched on some of the various issues, and I kind of want to go through them one by one, if you'll allow me, because as I look at the ideas that have been put forward by the Democratic Alliance, I remember a few years ago, pundits saying that the Democratic Alliance, very good at criticizing, but what do they then put as an alternative to the table? And I'll give you an opportunity to do that with this. You talk about how the Premier has promised Gauteng residents that his government would focus on the special economic zones and the revitalization of industrial parks. This was another empty promise, as many SEZs are not operating properly. So I suppose what I'm looking for is the alternative then. If you're saying his focus on special economic zones has failed, talk to me about how bad that failure was. And I know that you've had oversight visits where that's concerned, but what's the alternative?
So we visited, the special economic zones, the industrial parks as they call them, across Gauteng. And you'd find that most of them are hijacked by illegal foreigners who are now running businesses, chop shops, and in all of that. Go to Dobsonville, go to Pennyville, you'll see that for yourself. Go to El Rodo Park, you'll see that for yourselves, amongst many others. Now, you also go and look at, the amount of money that has been spent. We have now on record that there's been over 130 million that has been spent. But, there's not even conducive to continue operating. Small businesses are struggling in that particular instance. What we have been proposing, and this is something that I've been proposing even before the elections last year, is that until we deal with issues of infrastructure in our municipalities and in the province, we will never be able to then attract the right kind of investment knowledge. There's no way you're going to have people coming to invest when you cannot supply them with adequate, and quality water. There's no way you're going to be able to then attract investment and keep investment if you cannot supply them with, electricity. And now we're starting to see load shedding beginning to bite yet again. What we now need to then do is to then say, and he's made promises which has not been delivered, not a single one has been delivered around, the issues of electricity supply, independent of Eskom here in Gauteng. So we have been saying that we need to have an integrated infrastructure master plan that talks to the issues of electricity, that talks to the issues of water, that talks to the issues of roads. There are quite a number of industrial areas where now it's becoming a little bit difficult for companies to then get goods in and out of that. And this is something that, we now need to then start working around. So this is what we have been saying. And we have been saying again, municipalities will not be able to fund these things on their own if they are left to the municipalities. What we now need to then do is to have an integrated plan that includes all the municipalities. And from there, you need to then say, how much is it going to cost? The provincial treasury will now need to then come on board and say, how do we then raise money for these projects to then get going? If we're able to then do that, investors will then see that we are serious. What we have seen, especially in Johannesburg, and you'll hear this even tomorrow, because Panyaza likes claiming, easy victories, and he likes claiming things that has got nothing to do with the provincial government, but those are, private sector investments that will be coming through. The private sector has been saying we've been waiting for too long for some of these projects to kickstart, and therefore we're doing it on our own. But we are saying that we need to hold hands with the private sector. Issues around the security infrastructure, rolling out of broadband and all of that. These are some of the things that enables businesses to thrive. These are the same things that will ensure that, compliance, with business and running businesses profitably becomes, the norm here in Gauteng. And this is what we have been saying quite a number of times. And this is a proposal that we were willing to meet Panyaza around and discuss. Unfortunately, this has been met with arrogance. This has been met, with disdain, to say the least. Yeah,
I just want to sit with the economic issues a little bit, because I think that, there's a point where, the Democratic Alliance and say, the governing party or the leading party in this government of provincial unity have agreed on, and that is the importance of developing the township economy. The Democratic Alliance had been in support of the Township Economy Development Act. What happened to that? Talk to me about,
Naledi, we supported that, and we supported the development of the act, because we thought that for once we will be able to then see the townships, economies growing. We will see unemployment and skills development taking place in our townships. We will see more and more businesses coming out of our townships and government doing more business in the townships so that, we can get the economy going. But unfortunately, what got to be rolled out was a complete disaster, which is now actually being reviewed, because they didn't even have regulations after putting the act forward. So you now have, an act that is out there without any kind of regulations to then safeguard, the operations thereof, which is a disaster, because you cannot even, regulate what is happening. How do you even measure it? And this is something that, has been a big problem. And therefore, this is why we have said this is something that has to be pulled back. We have to then relook at it. And we have to then bring in mechanisms to make sure that we're able to then see how much of government's intervention is actually then being put in place, and how much of it is actually having a positive impact, and how much will actually government be able to then use its own spending muscle in these townships to make sure that the economy gets going, and also to make sure that there are regulations. Now, I can give you an example. We spoke about spaza shops, and then there was a big hoo-ha about the cleaning of illegal spaza shops and all of that. But to date, I mean, it was just a big hype of we're going to do this, and then afterward, there's absolutely nothing that is happening in that regard. So these are some of the things that we have been saying. Let's go back around the table, find permanent solutions, but also ensure that we're able to then see how much of government's own expenditure will be able to, not in a fraudulent manner, not in a corrupt manner, but in a way that is sustainable, but also in a way that gets a broader number of businesses to at least benefit out of the townships. That's what we have been saying. Not this thing of saying we'll paint spaza shops, we'll have Wi-Fi connectivity at spaza shops. How is that helping the spaza shop to generate an income? How is it helping them to grow the economy? So these are some of the things that we have been saying to the Premier even previously when he makes those announcements, to then say it's not helping. The other issue that we're sitting with, Naledi, is that Panyaza made a commitment and announcement around the so-called distribution centers. We've been told of distribution centers that are supposed to be assisting spaza shops, to get their goods much more closer at a cheaper rate and be able to then sell and be able to then compete with the likes of the Somalis and the Pakistanis. But this is something that now hasn't really developed into much. If you go to the centers, you find that the centers are lying empty, and therefore, our small businesses are back to square one.
Okay, let's talk crime in the province. There's, of course, and these are the wins that I'm going to note for Lesufi as I play devil's advocate, obviously, to your position here. He did last year say that we've got 7,000 CCTV cameras working in and around the province. That's one thing. You've got the commitment that he made around an e-panic button that would be there for us to have a fast response to health and emergency services. Ukai Mulao, Operation Shanela, these are all, programs that are in place, no?
Well, have you seen any of them? Have you felt the impact of them? Do South Africans in Gauteng feel the impact thereof? Do they feel that, the panic buttons, how many do have? Because according to the Gauteng's own reports, out of the 40,000 that were supposed to be the initial panic buttons, subscription or the rollout, less than 2,200 has actually then been given out. And we don't even know if that is actually then responded. But then it also takes us to another point that says that, to then say you have a panic button, but then police stations don't even have vents. Police stations don't even have, connectivity in the police stations. You still have police stations that have to rely on personal cell phones for them to be able to then communicate with the community. Surely that is not the way to go. We have been promised that there's going to be over 1,800 drones, that will be there, all over Gauteng to make sure that, we are monitored and protected from the sky. I can tell you that up to now, there's only about 33 that have been bought. And of those 33, there's only one that has actually been registered with or accredited with the South African Civil Aviation Authority, which then tells you that we only have one. We've been told that there will be choppers or helicopters that will be there patrolling. How many cars are now being hijacked? How many people are still facing kidnappings and all of that? How much of the so-called initiative has really dampened crime in Gauteng? And I mean, on Saturday, I was looking at footages, of people that in Atteridgeville, just on WF in Nkomo, where there has been, cash in transit. Where were the helicopters then? Where were the Mapanyazas there? And these are some of the things that we have been saying, Naledi, to then say, until we take care of the basics, making grand and big announcements is going to amount to nothing. What we have said is the following. One is that we have said that let's start with addressing the issue of lack of policemen, women on the ground level. The ratio now of the population to the police is actually not even acceptable by any standard whatsoever. The second thing is that you need to then make sure that you have enough vehicles that you are actually then empowering the police there. But we have been saying for time and time again, for the last 5 years, Let us fight for the devolution of power from a national perspective to a provincial perspective. This because, Naledi, you have to appreciate the fact that the crimes that are happening in Gauteng will be different somewhat to the crimes that are happening, in Limpopo, will be different to what is happening in the Northwest. And therefore, you can't have a one-size-fits-all kind of approach where, the minister or somebody at a national level decides what needs to happen at a provincial level. But you need to then have the authority at a provincial level to then be able to then do this. Yeah. Ellen Windy in the Western Cape has actually taken the fight on and needs more people like Panyaza Lesufi to come on board, and deal with this thing. But he hasn't been able to do that.
Okay.
And this is why we're failing, and this is why you still have Gauteng being the meta capital or having the highest rape numbers in the last quarter of 2024. This is why you're having the biggest contact crimes happening here in Gauteng and kidnappings happening here in Gauteng.
Okay, so look, we could talk for a long time, but I'm gonna make a request now that I've got you here and say, let's talk after. The State of the Province address has been given to us, of course, and here the position of the Democratic Alliance as the official opposition in the province. Of course, the DA Gauteng leader there, Solly Msimanga, speaking to us this evening. Let's take a short break. We are back in a moment.